Hi everyone and welcome to Property Insights. I'm Neil Harding.
I'm Mark Ashworth.
Today we're going to be talking about selective licensing and the reasons why you need to understand what selective licensing is all about, especially if you're investing in an area that has it. Let's start with what it is. Mark, do you want to explain for us?
Yeah, it sounds riveting, doesn't it? But something that you should be aware of in your particular area where you're investing. So typically, it's likely to be in areas which are sort of bigger cities. I believe Peterborough has selective licensing, probably cities like Birmingham, Nottingham, places like that which have a high capacity. Most of the areas where I invest in, it's not too much of an issue because they're smaller towns. So what is selective licensing? Well, it was brought in by councils to basically improve the quality of housing. So it's potentially there to enforce that landlords are providing quality homes for people up to a certain level. Sadly, it doesn't capture all because they're trying to avoid rogue landlords, or let's say people who don't care quite as much, in putting people into properties which aren't particularly very desirable. But of course, those landlords unfortunately still exist. They will just circumvent or avoid the selective licensing by other means. But that's the purpose of it. As I say, it exists at a council level. So if you have a property that you are renting out and it's a selective licensing area, you need to apply to the council for that. And typically that was going to cost you some dosh, probably, I don't know, 500 quid, 1,000 quid, don't know. But it might be would that typically be like for a 5-year period, would you say?
Yeah, so in Peterborough where I invest, the licence was a 5-year licence, and you'd be paying the same amount regardless of where in that 5-year licence period you were. So if there are only 2 of the 5 years remaining on that 5-year licence term, then you'd still have to apply for the licence. The cost would be the same, and it was in the region of £500 to £700, depending on your circumstances. It's slightly different for various reasons, but it's in that range. I think some cities are as much as £1,000, £1,500.
It sounds very similar to the sort of licence you'd have if you had a HMO. So a house of multiple occupation means that you are renting out rooms in a property or you're letting to students. And if you have a HMO of up to a certain number of people or beyond a certain number of people, then your local council will usually insist that you have to have a HMO licence. And that's not something to be confused with selective licensing. So typically if your property has got more than 4 people in it, you kind of have to have a HMO license in most council areas. Whereas if you have a single let property, then you don't have to have a license necessarily in many areas, only those that have selective. So basically go to your local council website and have a look to see whether or not they insist that you have a license of some kind, whether you're renting a single let or a HMO.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so is selective licensing really needed? Has it been successful in certain cities? I think that's an area of some controversy, definitely open for debate. As Mark was saying, selective licensing has been brought in ultimately with the aim of improving quality of housing for rented accommodation, and that can mean anything from avoiding overcrowding all the way through to there being no mould in properties, good ventilation, and maybe avoiding antisocial behaviour. So has all of those things work? I think it's debatable, and I think the cynics out there might be forgiven for thinking that it's actually another income stream for councils to swell the coffers a little bit, and maybe they can put that money to good work.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, I think that in general, the quality of properties that are being rented has definitely in the last 5 to 10 years massively improved as a sort of more younger generation comes in, and also people, developers and property investors recognise the fact that people are prepared to rent or want to rent quality homes, and that you'll actually get more rent for those homes if they are made into good quality and they're highly spec'd. I'm not talking hotel rooms kind of quality, but generally a bit better than just slapping in a cheap kitchen and some cheap carpet and some cheap magnolia on the walls, something a bit more special. And so with the influx of that kind of approach, I think that slowly the landlords who are, let's say, tired or that they care less, are probably coming out of the market now. But nevertheless, in every single industry, there's always going to be a few rogues that try and get away with a bare minimum. That's what the councils have tried to avoid. And I think, to be honest, it's just another one of those exercises that they try to put in place that they hope will fix things. But actually, I don't really think the worst of the worst really are affected. I think they still continue to be to be bad, which is, it's a big shame for tenants, obviously, but it could also be reflected in the cost of the rent. So if people are finding it difficult to afford not those nicer properties, they want something which is more affordable, they generally get having to to rent things which are of a lower quality, and it's often those people who are affected the worst with it. So yeah, it's a difficult one. I'd say probably it hasn't really made a massive impact, but it's there. It's the law. It's part of being compliant as a landlord. So you have to follow suit, don't you? Have to.
That's right.
Go with the flow.
Yeah. Which I think brings us on to exactly what should we as property investors be thinking about in relation to selective licensing.
Yeah.
Now that we've understood what it's all about, and I think that's a key part of it is you have to do it to be legally compliant if you want to let out a property. I think it makes sense, of course, before you go ahead and buy a property for investment, go onto the council website, find out if selective licensing is relevant to the city where you're looking to buy, and more specifically that actual property on that street, in that area of your city, does selective licensing apply? And if it does, then of course you need to factor in the cost of that into your deal analyzer, your financial due diligence when you're stacking up the deal. Does it still work? So not only have you got the cost of the actual license to apply for as well, which you'll want to include in your financial analysis, but of course also the cost of any repairs and improvements to the property that you will need to do over and above what you were planning to do anyway. You also need to factor that in as well.
I think there'll be a number of questions on your selective licensing form. Things like room sizes are a good one that obviously will be potentially relevant. Number of sockets. Whether or not you've got, if it's where the bathroom is, whether it's got, running water and all those kind of things will make part of it. I guess that's really the obvious stuff. The non so obvious things is whether or not you're a fit and proper person. So if you have any kind of criminal background, for example, or any kind of thing that might affect you legally in that way. That could certainly affect your ability to get licensed, so that's going to be a factor as well. Yeah,
and I think room sizes you touched on there, Mark. I think that's really important. Room sizes, when you view a property, make sure you are certain on exactly what the room sizes are, especially if there's a third bedroom that's quite small.
The box room.
The box room. So I've viewed a property.
Often the cardboard box room, yeah.
Absolutely. So I've definitely viewed properties where the third bedroom has been smaller than the minimum room size standard per the council. Now, there are two ways of thinking about that. It wasn't in the selective licensing area, so arguably you'd probably still be okay marketing that property to let as a 3-bed house. But my issue is, what if in 5 years' time that property does become under the selective licensing area rules? Suddenly you've got a bit of a concern there. Are you only going to really get a license for a 2-bed house even though you've paid 3-bed house money when you bought the property? Does it still work anymore? That remains to be seen. But I think even if the property does not come under selective licensing rules, I think it makes sense to research whether the city itself does have selective licensing, and if so, what are the room sizes and the standards, so that you know what the expectation from the council is. Also, if it doesn't have selective licensing at all but does have HMO license requirements, that's a good place to start on what the room size standards are that the council expects. So that will give you an indication of where they would go if they start to introduce selective licensing in the future.
So currently the mandatory small single room size limit is 6.51 square metres for a HMO. And that is for a single person living in that property with access to part of the shared area, which obviously if you have a single let, you're going to be using the lounge area as well as the kitchen area. So, but also it's reflective specifically about room sizes of the person who is in the room's age. So if they're a certain age, it has to be a certain size. So obviously, if you're a child or a baby, or you're more like a child up to sort of 12 years old, it's a certain size. The minute you turn to an adult, it has to be a certain size. Getting into the detail a little bit about it, but it's certainly worth investigating. And also, understanding that unfortunately estate agents do market properties as 3 bedrooms when sometimes the 3rd bedroom is sometimes too small to use as a bedroom for an adult, let's say.
Yep. Okay, so as always, we highly recommend you do all your due diligence before you purchase an investment property. Check out the council's website to see what their selective licensing rules are before you go ahead and purchase any investment property. We really hope that this has been insightful for you and look forward to hearing from you next time.
Thanks so much for joining us. See you soon.